I was ordered to escort a prisoner on a Tuesday morning. Routine transfer, high security prisoner, 4-hour drive to a federal facility. Me and 2 other officers. Standard protocol. I had done transfers before. They are not complicated. You follow the protocol, you stay professional, you do not engage with the prisoner beyond what the situation requires. I knew all of this. I followed none of it. His name on the transport document was Victor Hale, 41 years old, held on charges I was not fully briefed on, classified at a level above my clearance. I noted that. Prisoners held at that classification level are not routine, but the transfer order came through proper channels, signed by my commanding officer. Everything correct. We loaded him into the transport vehicle at 0700. He did not look at me when we loaded him. He sat quietly, hands secured, eyes forward. We pulled out of the facility. 3 miles down the road, he said my name, not my rank, not captain, my name. Claire. I said, "You will address me by rank or not at all." He said, "How is your daughter? Is she still afraid of thunder?" I told the driver to pull over.
I need to tell you about my husband before I tell you about the next 4 hours. Marcus died 2 years ago, not in combat, a car accident. 3 hours of driving to reach me in a hospital, and he never made it. He was a good man, a quiet man, the kind who remembered small things about the people he loved, details that other people let go. He knew our daughter Emma was afraid of thunder. He had been the one who sat with her through storms since she was 3. He had a specific way of doing it. He would sit on the floor of her room. He would count the seconds between lightning and thunder out loud. He turned it into a game. He turned the fear into something she could hold. Nobody else knew that. Not my sister, not my commanding officer, not anyone at my unit. Marcus knew. Emma knew. I knew. And now a prisoner in a military transport vehicle knew it. I pulled over on the side of a highway. My 2 officers looked at me. I said, "Give me 5 minutes with the prisoner." They looked at each other. I said, "5 minutes. Stay outside the vehicle." They got out. I turned around in my seat. I looked at the prisoner. He was already looking at me, calm, patient, like someone who had been waiting for this moment for a long time. I said, "Who told you that?" He said, "Marcus." I said, "Marcus is dead." He said, "I know. He died 2 years ago, 3 hours into a drive he never finished." I said, "Who are you?" He said, "Someone who worked with your husband for 4 years, someone he trusted, someone he told things to." I said, "Marcus was an architect. He did not work with people like you." He said, "He was not only an architect." I want to be honest about the next 30 seconds. I did not believe him immediately. My first instinct was threat assessment. Someone had done research on me, on Marcus, on Emma. This was a manipulation, a tactic. I know what manipulations look like. I have been trained to recognize them. But the thunder detail was not in any file. I had checked. After Marcus died, I had gone through everything. His records, his background, his work history. I had done it the way a soldier does it, systematically, completely. The thunder detail was not anywhere. It was not the kind of thing that ends up in files. It was the kind of thing that one person tells another person quietly, in a moment of trust. I said, "What did he tell you?" He said, "Everything. About you, about Emma, about what he was really doing." I said, "What was he really doing?" He said, "I can't tell you here. Not in this vehicle. Not on this road." I said, "Then when?" He said, "When we get to the facility, request a classified interview room. What I tell you there will change everything you think you know about the last 4 years." I said, "Why should I believe you?" He said, "Because I know about the thunder, and because I know something else." He leaned forward as far as his restraints allowed. He said, "The accident that killed Marcus was not an accident." I sat in the front seat for a long time. My 2 officers were outside. I could see them through the windshield, waiting. I thought about Marcus.
I thought about the 3 years we had been married before he died, the ordinary Tuesday evenings, the way he made coffee, the way he sat on Emma's floor during storms and counted seconds. I thought about the accident report I had read 14 times, the junction, the other vehicle, the specific terrible margin of 2 things in the same place at the same time. I had believed it was an accident. I had grieved it as an accident. This man in the back of my transport vehicle was telling me it was not. I turned around. I said, "If you are lying to me, I will know." He said, "I am not lying." I said, "If this is a manipulation." He said, "Claire, Marcus used to say you were the sharpest person he had ever known. He said you noticed everything. He said nothing got past you." I said nothing. He said, "He was right. So use that. Listen to what I tell you. Then decide." I started the vehicle. I finished the transfer.
At the facility, I requested a classified interview room. The duty officer looked at my paperwork. He said, "Transfers don't typically include interview requests, Captain." I said, "This one does. I need 45 minutes. My commanding officer can confirm the authorization." He made a call. He came back. He said, 45 minutes. The interview room was small. 2 chairs, a table, a camera that I asked to have turned off. The duty officer said no. I said fine. I sat across from Victor Hale. I said, "Start from the beginning." He did. He talked for 40 minutes. I am going to give you the shape of what he said, not every detail. Some of it is still active. Some of it belongs to processes I am not at liberty to describe fully. Marcus had been recruited 8 years ago, before we met, by an intelligence unit operating outside standard military channels, not illegal, classified, the kind of unit that does not appear in standard records. He had continued that work throughout our marriage, not always, not on every trip, but some of the architecture work was cover, some of the travel was not what I had been told it was. He had not told me because the classification required it, not because he wanted to keep it from me, because he could not tell me. Victor had been his handler for 4 years. They had been close, the way people get close when they work in situations that require complete trust. Marcus had told Victor about Emma, about the thunder, about me, not in operational reports, in the way that people talk when they trust someone completely. Then Marcus had found something inside the unit itself, something wrong. He had been moving toward reporting it when he drove to my hospital. He never made it. Victor said the accident was arranged by someone inside the unit who knew Marcus had found it. I said, "What did he find?" He said, "A pattern of information being sold, operational details, asset identities. People died because of it." I said, "Who arranged the accident?" He gave me a name. I knew the name. I had seen it on documents, in the chain of command above my unit, a senior figure, someone with enough access and enough authority to arrange what needed to be arranged. I said, "Do you have proof?" He said, "That is why I am in custody. I have been building the proof for 18 months. I was arrested before I could finish." I said, "Arrested by who?" He said, "People connected to the same name I just gave you." I sat with that. Then I said, "What do you need?" He said, "Someone with your clearance to look at what I have built, someone they would not expect to be involved, someone Marcus trusted." He said if anything happened to him, find someone who loves Emma the way he did, find someone who would want to know the truth. He said, "I found you." I left the interview room. I went to a payphone in the facility lobby, not my cell, not a military line. I called Marcus Webb. He answered on the second ring. I said, "I need to meet you today, not at the base, somewhere neutral." He said, "What happened?" I said, "Marcus may not have died in an accident." Webb was silent for 4 seconds. Then he said, "Where are you now?" I told him. He said, "Don't talk to anyone else. I'll be there in 2 hours."
Webb arrived in 1 hour and 40 minutes. We sat in his car in the facility parking lot. I told him everything Victor had said, in order, without editorializing. When I finished, Webb was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "The name he gave you." I said,
"Yes." He said, "I have seen that name in a context that concerns me, recently. I did not know what to do with it." I said, "Now you do." He said, "Claire, if this is real." I know. He said, "It changes everything." I said, "I know that too." He said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to finish what Marcus started." The investigation took 11 months. Webb handled most of it, quietly, through channels that the person named could not monitor. Victor's evidence was reviewed by people with the authority to act on it. It held up, every piece of it. The person named was arrested 9 months into the investigation, charged with multiple counts: the sale of classified information, the deaths of 4 assets whose identities had been compromised, and the arranged death of 1 intelligence operative, Marcus. The trial lasted 6 weeks. I attended every day. On the day of the verdict, I sat in the front row. Guilty. On all counts. I sat very still. Emma was at school. She did not know I was there. She did not know any of it yet. She is 8 years old. There will be time. What she knows is that her father loved her, that he sat on her floor during storms and counted seconds out loud, that he turned fear into something she could hold. That is true. That will always be true. Nothing that happened changes that.
I think about the 3 miles. 3 miles into a routine transfer, a prisoner who said my name, my daughter's name, a detail that was not in any file. I could have dismissed it. I was trained to dismiss manipulations. I know what they look like. I pulled over instead. I gave it 5 minutes. 5 minutes on the side of a highway changed everything. Marcus used to say I noticed everything, that nothing got past me. He was right about most things. I should have noticed sooner that he was more than he appeared to be, but he protected me from knowing, because he loved me, because he was trying to keep the thing he had found from reaching me before he could stop it. He did not get the chance to stop it. I did. She doesn't stay silent. She doesn't stay broken. She rises. Sometimes rising is pulling over on the side of a highway, giving something 5 minutes, listening, then finishing what someone else started. Subscribe. New story every week. Same ending every time. She rises. Leave a comment. Have you ever pulled over when something told you to stop and listen? I read every single one.